We have some exciting news here at the Viall Files. We are expanding our empire and adding a new show.
That's right. This is going to be a live show. It is called Better Date Than Never. It is going to be your go-to place for all things dating. We'll discuss everything from the pregame to the music you can get ready to, new hair and makeup trends, wardrobe ideas.
We can have a little phone a friend segment. We can have callers give advice. We'll obviously have Nick give his signature advice. We'll walk you through your date. If you have dates going on like the next weekend, or if you want to recap some dates you just went on, let's talk about who you're dating, where you're going, what is up. If you've ever wanted us in your back pocket for your dates, if you've ever wanted to pregame your dates with us, this is what it's for.
Or if you've ever been a part of someone who has a close friend's Instagram story where they spill the tea about the dates they go on, that is going to be this. We are going to get updates from people post-date. We're going to help people hype them up pre-date. This is going to be your go-to spot for all thing dating. We're there with you. We're rooting for you.
It's a community. We're creating a community around, specifically, dates or people are going on and trying to hear people's stories, but give people tips, things like that. But specifically around going on dates, interacting on the specific dates, all very dating, less relationship, more dating focused type of show. And to listen to it, all you have to do is download the app called AMP. Unfortunately, you have to have an iPhone. It is only currently available on the Apple App Store, so it's a free download. Check it out. And it will be every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. It'll be a ton of fun. Join us. Audience members will be able to come in and share, be very interactive. Again, it's live, so you get to hear a lot of things and more. You'll get to hear a lot of things that you're not hearing on the Viall Files.
It's an unedited.
It's a little more loose.
It's like dating can be hellish. Let's make it fun together.
Pour yourself a drink.
And it's all premiering on the 19th of this month,
Woohoo!
19th of January. So we hope that you all join us. So check it out. It'll be a ton of fun. Something to do to wind down. Have a glass of wine with us, whatever it is you do, and you get to interact with us live. We'll be right there. It'll be fun. So we hope to see you all there.
You're crazy.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Viall Files Going Deeper edition. I'm Nick, joined by Allie and Amanda. Ladies, how are you doing?
What's up, shawties?
What?
Loose, I think, is the answer. I think we're feeling loose.
I feel like that there's like a sexual connotation to the word loose. Anyone else?
I feel like if someone over the age of 55 says it, then maybe. But when I say it, I'm like,
she's
blah,
loose.
blah, blah.
What's
Seen
the
it
most
down to the-
intimidating thing about you,
Ooh.
Allie? Like, what's your badass alter ego?
I think the most intimidating thing about me is that I really am good on my own. I'm very independent and I don't give a shit a lot of the time. Or I'm willing to just be like, hey, yo,
I also
c'est
feel,
moi.
I feel like you have like a military level of precision. In terms of like, you are like, I feel like you can be, I just imagine you like if you were a superhero, I could imagine you being this like knife thrower.
Ooh, I like that.
Like I feel like you're put together, you're on it, and you are like focused in.
Thank you.
I thought it'd be like spreadsheets.
Okay, well, we have that too.
Should
There
organize.
needs precision there. But literally, Nick,
It's a superhero quality.
Nick called me over, when was that? Over Christmas? And you were like, I'm hoping your like data entry is going to help me out on this. It was some finance question.
Oh, yeah.
And I pulled up January of 2021. And I was like, okay, so on this date, you paid me this
I
amount
needed
of
to
money.
recall something
Yeah.
that I knew she would keep track of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had it. It was right there. And I was like, yeah, because when Byron sent me my tax information after my first year, I noticed it was off. And I had to have everyone resent their tax forms.
It's great.
Attention to detail.
Thank you.
It's a great quality.
Anybody care?
Sure.
No, I don't actually have an answer. The most like intimidating, like I don't know. I used
you
to
have
be
an
competitive.
extensive vocabulary. You're very good at articulating things.
I think
Just like my answer.
no. No, that's nice.
This is
I
where
just
you
like
go,
don't
yes,
know.
And
I don't. I'm like, could I weaponize my vocabulary? I don't know.
I didn't. It doesn't. Yeah.
I will pretentious people to death.
No, I just feel like you have a nice way of, explaining things, articulating, relating to people. You're very good at,
I think sometimes
clearly I'm not, because I can't even finish a fucking sentence.
We're working on it.
No, it's all flowing. I think sometimes I can be nice to people in situations where like I think they're kind of shaken by it. And I think it kind of throws them off.
Your niceness?
Yeah.
I think
sometimes no, I just
nice.
You're cute. You're nice.
No, but
Love yourself.
Like I feel like in settings where it's like supposed to be like kind of vaguely competitive, I'm not like I'm gonna fuck with your head. I just think it's like if people are coming at things from a very adversarial place and then you like acknowledge like on a human to human level are just like, hey, like we're both humans and like I'm going to be like I would like to be nice to you as another human I'm coming into contact with. I feel like it can really
catch
like
people off guard.
Yeah. And it's like where do you go from there?
Do you
like
think
what do you
have,
do to me?
do people think you have an alternative motive, you think?
I think sometimes maybe they're like suspicious, but I feel like it usually like comes out. I feel like the way I'm nice to people is by being like a little weird. Like I'm like I don't know. Like I think I'm very much like I'm a freak show. and I care about you and you can be a freak show too.
It's a very warm and open space. For example, on my couch last evening, I felt very okay sharing many things.
Speaking of last night, you were watching.
Why were we together?
Why, you ask? First, we went to improv. Then we got Chipotle. Third, we watched Prince Harry on 60 Minutes.
We did.
You should do more voices on this show.
Okay.
You're good at voices.
Thank you. I'll just start delivering things in weird accents. I should have done the Bachelor bios. Each girl got a different
All
missed
I'm saying
opportunity.
is I invite you to do more.
Thank you. Thank you for opening that
He
door.
believes in you.
Thank you so much.
Anyway, you were saying.
We watched Prince Harry on 60 Minutes. And we were a bit jarred by first when they panned to Anderson Cooper sitting and there's like the book behind him. Every time, like before a commercial break, Amanda would be like, jump scare. Like it was just a very jarring editing situation.
Which I think speaks to the fact that the interview itself, I think a lot of the good moments had already been leaked. Like I think like when he talked about his mom, I think that was very emotional, very raw. There were some details that absolutely stomped on my heart.
The fact that he, until the age of 23, I believe is what he said, thought that she was potentially just in hiding from the British press and would like come and let them know at some point.
He's clearly experienced some trauma. And my biggest takeaway was I just feel for the guy.
Yeah.
That being said, I just feel like he needs to stop. I just think he needs to stop. I think it's just, it's like I love my bald, ugly brother. It was like,
who I call Willie.
Oh no, I'm not talking shit. Like, but he's like beat me up, and and then like the title of the book, The Spare. It's just, listen, like he just happens to be the second born in a weird, fucked up family.
They didn't let him on the plane to go see his dying grandmother. And by the time he got up there, she was gone.
No, listen, no.
I was horrified. I wouldn't stop talking about that. I was like, Amanda, we got to commercial break. And I was like, let's rehash.
It's a fucked up family. There's a lot of fucked up families out there, and they're royals, so they're royally fucked up. Like,
yeah. The bigger the stage, the bigger the problems.
I just go back to like we were talking about it when we were breaking it down, the documentary. I saw a tweet. What did I sent it to you guys?
So it says, sometime in the years ahead, Harry may look back as I did and wish he could unspeak what he had said. Patty Davis, an author and the daughter of Ronald Reagan, writes in a guest essay, not every truth has to be told to the entire world.
Yeah. And I think he's going to look back
and regret it.
I don't know. He's made a shit ton of money.
True.
So there's that. And it's just, he's making so much money doing this, all while really talking some shit. And it is still one side of the story. I mean, and maybe it's all true, the plane story, but it's still one side of the story. And I don't think even in his mind, if he's like, I'm telling you exactly what happened, he's just telling us exactly what happened from his point of view.
And
I think there's always other point of views. And it's just coming across as really shitting on your family. Most of his supporters, I feel like, because there's a lot of people who have fallen out of touch with their family, and rightfully so. And maybe, I've talked about this a lot. I talk about this in this episode with Justin. I of all the blessings and privileges I've been given in my life, the love of my parents and how they raised me is the thing I am most grateful for, followed closely by my height. But yeah, and I know a lot of people don't have that type of benefit, but all families I think are messed up, and even my family, we have turmoil and ups and downs, and I just think when it comes to family, good or bad, you only have one. And it's of my belief, and it's just my humble opinion that, I'm always going to try to have some contact in relationship with my family, no matter what, no matter whether I like them or dislike them, and how, and maybe I'm in a privileged point of view to say that because ultimately it's been net positive, but he's just really shitting on his family. His argument was like, they are talking shit. They're just doing it through the media. It's like, okay, maybe, I guess.
it felt like there was kind of POV constipation in the sense that he'd had all of these years of feeling like his point of view, nobody cared, nobody would listen to it.
Point.
He was like really like kind of shackled in terms of like never being able to like explain, have his reality validated.
What is it? Don't complain, don't explain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think right now he's finally like, okay, it finally went nuclear. So I'm sharing my viewpoint, and I imagine there must be just like so much that needs to come rushing out of him that
It's called therapy.
But I think so much of it probably has to do with like
not 16 minutes.
But I think there's just this self-preservation of being like, you tried to like disgrace my wife on the public stage and disgrace me, and like you tried to bury me, and it's like, let's go, motherfuckers. You want to bury people? Like, I have some stuff to say. Like, get your
Totally.
shovel.
Grab your shovel.
Totally. I mean, yes, exactly. But in terms of the most righteous approach, like, yeah, revenge, sure. Like, but it's falling into that category of more.
The best TikTok I've seen is, in Mean Girls when Regina prints off the burn book pages and throws them, and they like made it Prince Harry, like Oprah interview, documentary, 60 Minutes, the book. Like it was the most perfect example of it just keeps coming.
But you're right. That's how it's coming across to me. Is this more? There's not some like altruistic reason he's doing this. It's just a tell-all about his family, and he wants his point of view across, and he's angry and he's mad and he's dealt with some trauma, and his mom died, and he has a right to be very upset. I really feel for him. I feel for what has happened to him. I feel for what he's going through now, and I feel for him in the future. I feel for Meghan and Harry in the fact that like between both their parents, they only seem to have a relationship with her mom. Mm-hmm. And that's sad. I'm sad for them for that reason. And
Doria is putting in the legwork.
I know.
It's a lot on Doria's shoulders.
But I do think they should stop, from one's humble person's point of view. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp Therapy. We love it. We advocate for it. We think it's great to do it. And we strongly believe on this show that investing and working on your mental health is just as important as your physical health.
Your well-being matters in all capacities of life.
Yeah. And so we make a lot of investments like our education, our jobs,
our
our
relationships,
bank accounts,
our fitness and how we eat, but our emotional health. And so we do that through therapy, and you can get access to great therapy with BetterHelp. And you can do it from the convenience of your home, your car, wherever you are. You can do it right on your phone, your tablet, your computer. You can do it without showing and revealing your face. You can just do it voice to voice. If you want to interact more and see your therapist, you can do that. It's affordable. It's flexible. It's entirely online. You go to betterhelp.com. You take a quick assessment. They figure out what you want to talk about, and they find the perfect therapist for you. They have literally thousands of therapists they're working with. They get more and more therapists every day. And so much about therapy is about finding the right therapist that you can connect with. And BetterHelp makes that so convenient. So if you want to live a more empowered life, Therapy can help you get there. Visit betterhelp.com/VIALLFILES today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp, HELP.com/viallfiles. Everyone loves a good story, and it's even more meaningful when it's from your loved ones, like your grandparents, your parents. Maybe it's that great uncle, or maybe it's a sibling. But Storyworth is helping families stay connected like never before. And especially if you are thinking of gifting a loved one and maybe you think they have everything, or, maybe it's just like, I don't know.
There's always someone that's hard to buy for.
I'm tired. Yeah. The hard to buy for family member. Think of Storyworth. Every week, Storyworth emails your loved ones a thought-provoking question of your choice from a vast pool of possible questions. Each unique prompt asks questions you've never thought of, like, what is your fondest childhood memory? What's the best advice you've ever received? And then they will answer all these questions, and then once it's all done over the course of the year, they put in this wonderful keepsake that you can share with other people and your family members that stands the test of time. Like I said, one of my favorite memories as a child has always been hearing my parents and my uncles and aunts talk about stories from their childhood. It was always fun. And through Storyworth, we've been able to lock that in for years to come, for generations to come. And you too can do that with your family. To get to know your loved ones better and preserve those special moments forever with Storyworth, right now, for a limited time, you can save $10 on your first purchase when you go to storyworth.com/VIALL. That's STORYWORTH.com/VIALL to save $10 on your first purchase. Storyworth.com/VIALL.
I do wonder if it's him trying to just be like, fuck this institution. They perpetuate so much harm. I am the one who has the best vantage point to see them. And so I just want to I want to dismantle it. I'm doing it. This is not necessarily, because I think I agree where there's some of this is a therapy thing about coming to terms on your own time and with your own emotions and reactions to that situation. I don't think that personal work needs to be done on such a world stage, but I wonder if he's doing it on the world stage to be like, no, you don't get to do this anymore.
My question is, now that they've done the documentary, now that his book was coming out this month, it's kind of one of those things where if you were going to say things, if you were going to tell, those are your opportunities. Are they going to come out with a sequel, or are they done?
I don't know. And I guess he's doing this for him and his family, and that's fine. But that's it. He's not doing it for any other greater good. You can't convince me otherwise.
I think he's doing it, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily for the greater good, but I would imagine my take on it is that his thesis is actions have consequences. And I think he's you did some fucked up actions, and here are the consequences.
I mean, we all feel that when we're feeling wronged and we want revenge. He's doing this for revenge. And and for money.
You don't call it revenge when you
it
you
was
put someone
altruistic.
but when you put someone in jail, a murderer in jail, that's not called revenge. That's called enacting justice. I'm not saying that this is enacting justice, but it is. I think
justice for him, because he is judge, jury, and executioner when it comes to himself and how he thinks people should treat him, and he's
based on his family's roles, they can't even act as witnesses.
I think he thinks he's judge, jury, and he's the media's the executioner.
But for him, how he's handling this, you know what I'm saying? We all do this. We all are judge, jury, and executioner for who we decide we let into our lives, and who we spend our time with, and who we invest with, and how we treat people who we think have wronged us, or whatever it is. And he has the right to do that. All I'm saying is, and that's fine. He's doing it for himself. Great. I don't think he gets some sort of good for I don't think he's carrying any mantle, for anyone else but himself and his family, and good for him. They haven't announced, have they donated any of this wealth that they've accumulated over the past year?
I mean, they have their various, I think, philanthropic pursuits.
Sure.
Also, something that I mentioned that I don't think people knew because you didn't know it, was when we were watching the 60 Minutes and there's footage of their wedding, Meghan was allocated a budget for her dress. Her dress was very simple. The veil was, I think...
Is that bad?
What?
I don't know how that works. Is that normal?
That's
not
normal.
Okay.
That's normal. Kate was given the same as well.
Gotcha.
They get to work with designers. They have say in that. But Meghan's dress was simple and it didn't take up the full budget. And from everything I've read, she took the remaining chunk of her dress budget and donated it. It wasn't applied.
It's still taxpayer money. So she donated taxpayers' money? I don't think you get a medal for that. I want her to donate her money.
I know. I'm just pointing it out
because
I don't think
that's
people...
but nobody knew that about her.
And even
I don't think that's a big deal.
Prince Harry, when they won a lawsuit, I believe this is I believe this is all correct. There was a lawsuit to one of the one of the like newspaper company or someone who was publishing things in the UK when they still lived there. And I believe there was like photos of them taken while they were at their property or some very intrusive situation where photos were being shot through windows, unacceptable. I believe they sued them for a certain amount of money. And then all the headlines were, Harry and Meghan make all this money off of this lawsuit for these photos. Harry then turned around and donated all of that money. They didn't keep that. So it was more so for him making a statement like, do not come for my wife and, our personal life by shooting through windows and doing things you're not legally allowed to do. But he didn't keep that.
Okay. That's great.
When they were still
I don't
royals.
think the not spending taxpayer money and then donating that, I don't know if that's much of a...
But where was it supposed to
still
go?
think
She
it's
could have
an
used
act.
it and she
Yeah.
didn't.
The tax, I don't know. Like, if it's
Give
taxpayer
it back.
money, well, they could spend it on whatever, something else. You know what I'm saying?
But they
like,
didn't spend it on something else.
But you're acting like, I don't know how they allocate this money or this budget, but any business you run, you have a budget for things. Hey, we got a budget for this. And if you go below budget, it's not like use it or lose it. It's not like this money you get to pocket it. It's just, I guess we can use it on other things. Maybe they could have used it for some sort of like social work program or I don't know.
Like
She's
charity?
But what I'm saying, it's not her money to give away. It was her money to use. You know what I'm saying? It was her money to use on a dress. And I don't think, for me, other people could disagree. I don't know if you get a bunch of brownie points for donating not your money and not spending as much as you could. I mean, it's nice. I mean, it's thrifty, and I guess that's great, but like, I'm more of the 140, like 200 million or plus that they've been making, and I have no problem. Get yours. But like, all I'm saying is they're doing this for themselves and they're not doing it for some sort of altruistic greater good. It is a self-serving endeavor. And I have no, most of the things I do are self-serving, but I don't know if it's anything more than that.
I think maybe that's the idea, just like on a broad scale as humans, like we try to rectify the things that we feel like have been most like oppressive to us. And so we kind of project like, oh, if this has been a really intense struggle for me, like I am fighting on behalf of everybody not having to go through this. And it's like very focused on a personalized thing. But I don't know. I do just think the part of the documentary where they talked about like social media and like the way that people believe that, like I think that's something like we talk about on the show all the time about like reality TV.
I think it's a good reminder. Yeah. Like I think there's a good reminder that don't believe everything you read or see. I think a lot of people who have fallen out with their family or who have pushed back or set boundaries with their family, I bet those people watching this felt seen and heard. I don't think Harry did it for those people.
This is a non sequitur, but between the three of us, judge, jury, executioner, who's what? I have an answer.
Okay.
No, I don't know, but I want other people's answers first.
No.
Off of instinct, I feel like jury, because you always bring up other opinions.
Yeah, you're always fighting. Always fighting for the common man.
And I would say Nick's the executioner.
I kind of have to be.
Yeah, that's what I think. Because
I think you're the executioner.
I would like to be, but Nick's the one with the name on the wall.
I'll be the judge. Yeah.
Okay. So I just carry out your dirty work.
Yeah. I like that.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm a little like henchman with like
you
an
get
axe.
the job done, Allie.
Speaking of executioner, you guys watched The Menu?
Oh my God. Okay.
Did you watch it or did you not watch it? I'm getting the sense that you maybe didn't watch it.
I didn't, but I watched 2 seasons of The White Lotus. So I can talk about that.
Hey,
well,
not nothing.
Yeah, well, we talked about that.
The Menu is one of those movies
Trying.
that I felt like people told me I meant to see in theaters. Like my boyfriend's mom was like, it's really good. You have to see it. Didn't get the chance to it. And then you brought it up and I was like, okay, fine. I'll finally watch it. Went into it knowing nothing about it, which I think was the best way to go in.
Yeah.
And oh my God.
It had my attention the whole way.
It was a captivating movie.
That's the thing. More than it had my attention the whole way. And that is saying something with movies nowadays.
Yes.
Like I wasn't, lots of times we put on movies or TV shows, I'm on my phone or like I'm distracted or I won't finish. Like I was all in.
Locked in.
Natalie tried to talk about something. Babe, like this, I was very captivated by it. And the thing I was most captivated was how they like framed death. And I don't know what the goal of the movie was, or when they wrote it. I don't know if it was like a critique on the service industry or fine dining or whatever. That didn't really resonate all that much with me, but it was more about how they kind of trivialized death, because, spoiler alert, by the way, people die in it. But they talked about the characters ultimately didn't really seem to push back on the fact that they might die. And it really made me, and I was like wondering why. And it really made me what I think that's what bothered me while watching it. Not bothered me about the movie or like the creative choices, but like it like bothered my soul. And like it made me, I was thinking about it the next day, because I was like, I think, are we afraid to die? These people didn't act like they were afraid to die. It was just like something to do, and they talked about death as it was like a creative choice. And they also talked about death as if it wasn't the end of something, that it was just like a thing. Did you like feel that when you were watching that?
That's really interesting. I not necessarily, like, now that you're saying it, I'm thinking a lot more about it. I think the way I was sort of framed them not fighting back was kind of the idea that like these are people who are so wealthy and elite that they're just detached from a lot. And so there's kind of this like inability to it like the difference between like power versus like actual like functionality and capabilities. Like for example, the man who was also, oh my God, disconcertingly an absolute doppelganger to this terrible man I hooked up with in college.
Nicholas Holt's character?
Yes. Is he the main guy who was like with Anna Taylor-Joy?
Yeah.
Oh my God, absolute doppelganger to a T in a terrifying way, and also similar in mannerisms. Child. But I think it was like this whole idea of like, oh, he can be so into food. And then I don't want to spoil it, but like, the commentary of like what happens when he actually tries to cook. Like I kind of was more framing it through that lens of like these people who think because they have a certain level of like power and prestige that it will save them when it won't. Like how the critic, like the way she tries to negotiate. I thought her character was like, I was like, I want to see the arc of this, because she started out so pretentious and so poised.
Yeah. Are you guys afraid of dying?
Kind of.
Do you think about dying?
I definitely had like when I was in high school, I was I grew up very religious, but I think in high school, like I definitely like was very religious, more so on the personal level than I was like, oh, we're getting dragged to church. And I just remember thinking about like the thought of there being nothing after dying. I remember it like for days, it like consumed me. Like it was a very depressive thought. I don't know why my voice is getting so low.
It's
depressive.
I'm more worried about people I love dying than me dying.
But it's just like done.
And when I think about dying, I feel bad for like abandoning people. Like I
That's
think
it?
a lot about. I mean, like there's obviously situations where I feel like if I'm ever in a situation where I feel really unsafe and like it kind of like activates that thing. Like yeah, it's like I feel fear, but it's not I feel so I like think I have many intrusive thoughts about my parents and loved ones dying.
Oh my God. When the man said that he was my Uber driver, but he wasn't my Uber driver, and I realized that once I was in the car and the car was locked, and I was like, my body's ending up in a river tonight. Like I was
so
like,
scary.
We're done. I was like, this is it. We're done.
I will say that's how I realized that I cared about you, is like when I first like probably 18 months into this job, I started worrying about you dying.
Oh
and
my
I was
God.
like, huh, I care about Nick.
Why would you worry about me dying?
It's not rational. It's like a fear of like, oh, these people who are like big parts of my life or who I need in
Now I gotta worry about me dying.
Gosh.
How did I die in this fantasy?
No, it's never like it's never in
fantasy.
Nightmare. No, it's never like a specific like this is gonna happen. It's more like, oh no, like it's about loss more than it is like death, if that makes sense. But I did think The Menu was like a crazy movie. The end was like unhinged. I thought from a writer standpoint, I was like,
the end was fine.
Yeah,
it wasn't great.
I was like, because I didn't feel like, and I again had my attention the whole time. Think it's a great movie. Would recommend it wholeheartedly to people. I don't think there was necessarily a payoff at the end, but I was also thinking, I was like, what the fuck would the payoff be?
Yeah,
it was so wackadoo. Like, how would they possibly pay off what they set up?
Yeah.
I love when you deliver certain words. It's never like there's never any rhyme or reason, but you have this little like lululu, like certain, and it just hit it with wackadoo. But it's happened before where you're like, sometimes I get a little loose. Like it's just like you do this little like ooh certain words.
Not to get into the whole philosophical. What's your gut tell you when you die?
I'm going to die on a train.
No.
No. We're not asking.
Is there something or
do you
nothing?
ride trains frequently?
Do you not ride enough of trains for that to be the end?
I always had, when I was a kid, I had like really intense reoccurring nightmares about me dying in train stations. And I really think I'm going to die on a train.
A station, not even a train?
Yeah, I would be on the tracks. It was horrifying. Like a mouse in a maze,
Probably
but the train tracks.
But anyway, back to my question. When you die, what's your gut tell you? Your gut, not what you want to believe. Is there something or nothing?
The thing that resonated most with me as a theory is on a gut level is you go back, like, I don't know how I existed before I was born, but I think you return to whatever state that was.
That didn't really answer my question.
Yeah.
What do you mean? So nothing.
So nothing.
Yeah. Well, like, I think I don't think
like,
there's
you'll have
sentience.
no.
Well, you implied that there was something.
Or I guess the lack of feeling
You feel like your
sentience.
consciousness existed before you were born?
I don't know if it did.
I'm
Do you
asking
believe
you
in
what
like
your gut tells you?
in other lives? Like when people are like, "Oh, I was blank in another life."
I read the book Many Lives, Many Masters. I'm probably butchering it. It's a book about reincarnation. Really good book. It sold reincarnation very well.
But okay, do you think we're aware of reincarnation? Because I'm like, what are the odds I'm on my first life and you guys are also on your first life? Like, if reincarnation is a thing, it'd be pretty crazy that I hadn't come across someone who, like, how would they make sure people don't talk about it? Like, how would they keep it secret?
That way.
Yeah, no.
It's like a subconscious thing.
My mom had a theory where when you encounter people, like there was a girl I went to high school with who was, I mean, we were obviously teenagers at that point, but she was just wise beyond her years. And my mom was saying something along the lines of like, when you encounter people like that, it must mean like they've had.
Your mom believes in reincarnation?
It was a comment she made. I don't know. We can ask her. But less so of, oh, I was a bug, but maybe more so like, if you finish a life, again, very Catholic thing, but if you were to finish a life and you end up in purgatory, which is the space between heaven and hell, maybe part of that, maybe that purgatory process, maybe part of that is going back and doing it again to learn those lessons.
Do you believe in something or nothing? What's your gut? Not.
I don't know. It's something I like wrestle with. I don't know.
I want to ask you.
It scares the shit out of me.
This question very quickly. There's this book called Elsewhere that I think, in terms of if there is something, the premise of it is like you end up on a boat and then you go back to like the underworld, not in like a hell connotation way, but like the death, and then you age backwards. And there are these things called there's like viewing booths where you can see what's happening on Earth. And like some people become like addicted to them where they can't help. But it's called Elsewhere. It's such a good book. And I think that was really interesting to me about this idea. So like she goes back and her grandmother, who died several years ago, is the only one who's there because like the main character dies like in a really upsetting accident at 16. And so her grandmother's now like a much younger version of herself. And that I found like the Benjamin Button, like, oh, like the symmetry of like you age and then you age backwards. And then when you're a little baby, you get sent off in the ocean. I thought that was compelling. Ooh. Do you something or nothing?
I think my gut's more leaning towards nothing. But, I mean, I don't know. But like maybe there's some sort of energy. I believe in energy. I feel like
there has to be, or else it's just I'm going to be too depressed.
I believe in energy, and I don't know what that means, but I do feel like an energy between people and things. Does that mean there's like an afterlife? I certainly want to believe, that's for sure. Yeah.
My dad had a good line where he was saying, even if there's nothing, like a lot of times I feel like, especially people who are very religious, like people who aren't, are like, well, why are you doing all these things? And why do you do X, Y, and Z if there's nothing, or if there's all this evidence that there isn't something, or just like one big bang thing? And he said, why not? Like, exactly. He was like, I'd rather live my life in this kind of, I guess, religious Christian way if it means I'm being a good person. And then
I love that. Yeah.
Reach the end of my life and be like, well, guess I was wrong.
When I was, going to church every Sunday as a Catholic, that was always my mindset. So it's like, I'll never know if I'm wrong, but if I'm right,
yeah,
might as well hedge my bets.
If there is a God, I know I'm not him. And, I guess we'll see,
Well, if you're God.
No, I'm just saying, like, I just know I'm not kind of thing. But I used to say, I know there's a God. And all I know is I know there's a God and I know I'm not him, in a sense of like, or her.
Time to poll our audience. If you are on your seventh life,
just in case.
please let me know.
It's like our CTAs where it's like, are you reincarnated? Ask Nick about it.
Send it an email. And
Honestly,
ask Nick
yes.
at theviallfiles.com.
If you think you're reincarnated,
Please
We'd
email love
us.
to talk.
we'd love to talk. I will say, I think the book's called Many Lives, Many Masters. It didn't make me believe in reincarnation, but it was like, maybe. Okay. We have a great episode for you. Justin Baldoni joins us to talk about masculinity and how it intersects with relationships and dating. And we have a wild texting office hour call.
Woo!
Oh my God.
Zinger.
A lot of fun. So we'll be breaking down more Bachelor Bios and freestyle next week.
With Lisa Schwartz,
That's right.
friend of show.
Should be fun. And send in those questions at asknick@theviallfiles.com
Or your reincarnation stories.
or your reincarnation stories.
Also, thank you for all the awesome love letters, catharsis in the notes. Keep those coming. We're very excited to use them.
Let's get to Justin. Justin, welcome.
Hey,
How's it going?
It's going wonderfully. I was just noticing that this is not currently what Los Angeles looks like.
It is not. No, it's currently rain season. It's been going on for a long time. I feel this is the rainiest winter I've experienced in LA. I've been here for 8 years.
Yeah, I'm loving it.
Yeah, me too.
Generally, I like it. I mean, I'm kind of ready for it to be done.
Mm-hmm.
It's the driving though is I feel like people get really overwhelmed.
It's the other people.
Yeah.
I'm from Wisconsin, so like weather and driving has never been that much of an issue.
Move out.
Yeah.
You can just tell people. I feel like people are screaming behind their wheel the way they're driving. Like they're like, ah, in the rain.
We need a
imagine
dedicated
people
lane of the
yelling the
highway
whole
for people
time?
who know how to drive in this.
Can you imagine just driving past someone and they're just yelling in their car?
No, I did that the other day in like an intersection in North Hollywood because there was like 6 ways to go and I tried to turn and it was a one way and I fully like jaw dropped screaming. I was like, anyone who's watching me drive is watching a TV show. It's great.
Well,
That's
amazing.
Yeah.
Here we are.
We need it though. We definitely need
We-
the rain. It's the problem is that because we don't get a lot of rain, we're not built for rain. There's just flooding and
Yeah, there's a lot of
mudslides
runoff because
and
of water. The ground's too dry.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
it doesn't absorb it. And I have a truck and I hydroplaned twice on the way here. And I was,
Oh.
I'm like, oh, I guess I'm gonna go slower than 65 and
Well, we're glad you made it here safely.
made it here safely. Happy to be here.
Well, we didn't have you to talk about the weather, which was still fun, but we wanted to talk about masculinity, of which you talk a lot about. Obviously, you have your new book, Boys Will Be Human, and Man Enough. It's been out. When did that come out?
That came out a year ago.
Year ago?
A year ago.
You're just pumping out books.
Yeah, this was no. Yeah, I did 2, and I'm done for a while.
You're done for a while?
We have a picture book coming out at the end of next year, and that's it.
Nice.
But that's been done for a while. This was really the Boys Will Be Human is really it's been really near and dear to my heart, and that came out a few months ago actually.
Well, we talk a lot about relationships and dating on this show. We have a large woman audience, but we have our 10 percenters out there. But as it relates to dating and love and relationships and people's pursuit for finding a partner and working through relationships, I think masculinity obviously plays a big role, especially in today's climate and the discussions going around it. So I thought it'd be a lot of fun to bring you in and talk with you about it because it's something you seem to be very passionate about. And I guess for starters, I'm really just curious, how did you get into this topic? How did you become someone who really became passionate about this topic enough to want to write 2 books about it and really kind of in a way, turn it into a part of your career, I suppose. So how did that light bulb go on for you, and when did that happen?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. First of all, I'm a man. And over the course of my life, I realized how unhappy, how disconnected I was, how I was kind of taught as a young boy to just live in this constricting box, and that anything that I did outside of that box would be deemed unmanly, unmasculine, feminine, if you will. The worst thing that I could ever be called, I remember as a young boy, was a girl. And that didn't ever register that, oh, well, the worst thing that I could be as a young boy is a girl. Therefore, I must kind of almost hate the parts of me that look like girls, like the quote unquote feminine parts of me. And then you grow up, and for those of us who are straight, identify as straight, we're supposed to then be in relationship with girls while hating the parts of us that look like them. I found myself constantly trying on different suits of armor, different masks. So I was dating when I was younger, saying things I didn't mean, bullying when I was bullied, just always trying to compensate for something, trying to like just raise my status in this patriarchal hierarchy, if you will, of like growing up as a boy, and just always feeling deeply unsatisfied. Like I don't feel like there's ever a place for young boys or for men to just be okay with who we are. We always have to be something more. We have to be working more. We have to be doing more. We have to be lifting more. We have to look better. We have to do this to make more money, so that then we can be enough. Yeah. And nobody ever told me growing up that I was enough just as I was. So I started to kind of dissect that and wonder, like, okay, in relationships, like, well, okay, why am I acting like this? Or when I'm around it, if I meet a man and I'm like, puff up my chest a little bit, I'm like, why am I doing that? I go home. Have you ever been around somebody where you've just said something that you don't even believe, and then you're like, why did I say that? I just started asking myself these questions, and it all led me back to masculinity and the lessons, the scripts, if you will, that I was given as a young boy that then follow me through adulthood and manhood. And I just see a lot of the problems that exist in the world come from this source.
In terms of your source, talking about where this kind of came from and how it affected you, where do you feel like you learned your model of masculinity as a young man? Was, for me, like I think of like my upbringing, my parents. How was it for you? Like, where did you?
Yeah, I think for those of us with fathers, I definitely think we learn from our fathers.
Yeah.
I read about in both books. My dad was a really sensitive man, so I was really lucky. Like he was an emotional man. He was very sensitive, very loving, very present. And then, of course, as a young boy, you also learn from TV and film and movies and what girls then tell you they want, what society tells girls to want, what society tells men we have to be. And what was interesting is I found myself actually resenting my dad a lot growing up because he was so sensitive. And I wanted my dad to be like the other dads who were hunters and
really?
Fishermen and worked on jobs and smoked cigarettes and cigars and drank with their buddies. And that wasn't my dad. My dad was a businessman who was actually very in touch with his feelings. He didn't know how to be vulnerable, but he was very emotional. And I didn't learn that.
Why do you feel like you resented that?
Because I was bullied for being sensitive.
Gotcha.
Right. So you grow up, you emulate the person that you think is the savior, the hero in your life, the father, and then you try to be like that, and then you get real life feedback in your day-to-day life of whether or not that's working. And I had lived in this small town in Oregon where it was not okay to be a sensitive kid. It was not okay to cry. It was not okay to have your feelings hurt, or to share that. It wasn't okay to have more friends that were girls unless you were trying to get with them. And so I was like, well, I was annoyed. I was annoyed at my dad for not teaching me how to fight, like these other kids' dads, or not teaching me how to camp or how to start a fire, because he didn't know. That wasn't his skill set. What I didn't realize was that he was actually teaching me the most important skill, a skill that many of those boys I grew up with probably still don't have to this day, and that many boys don't have. Which is emotional intelligence. And something that I think is really important for young boys to learn, especially as they get into the dating world, which brings us back to, I think, the show that you guys are doing.
Yeah, it's really, because it was funny. I was reading your book a lot, and it was interesting because I actually, honestly, I found myself having a hard time in some situations relating to it.
All right, let's talk about it.
I feel very fortunate for like my childhood.
Yeah.
And I've never considered myself to be a typical kind of guy, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Like other than playing sports as a young man, I was a jock, I suppose. But I liked to dance. I was into fashion, but it never really.
How old are you?
I'm 42.
You're 42.
Yeah. So I
did great. Good skincare.
Thanks. Yeah.
Regimen.
Likewise. Yeah. But I never really, I guess maybe it's because I was independent. I don't know where it comes from, but I was always kind of comfortable with that stuff.
With
And
what stuff?
Well, the things, not worrying about my interests as it relates to not be like, I never hunted. I didn't fish. I wasn't an outdoorsman guy. And I grew up in Wisconsin. So all my peers.
I have some good friends
did.
from Kenosha.
Oh, really? Yeah. And so that was not the norm. I mean, other than getting into high school and being, it was.
So you didn't really care about anybody else's approval?
Well, I'm sure at some points I did, but masculinity was nothing I really worried about. I always kind of knew I wasn't an atypical kind of macho guy, and that never really bothered me because I guess I was always confident in myself in other aspects, whether it was be sports or other things. I think I've been very lucky in terms of things I've been good at or the privileges I've had and things like that. And I attribute a lot of that to the love of my parents and how they raised me. I mean, I remember the first time crying into my mom's arms over a girl. I was in the 6th grade, and there's probably been 15 or 20 more times in my life I've done that. It's not something that I've really, and I have memories of my parents always telling me that was an okay feeling. So
that's great. Though.
Yeah,
that was great.
I feel very fortunate.
Yeah.
But so it was, reading your book and having this conversation. We talk a lot about relationships and dating, and we have men listen to this, and it's just like how do we get men? How do we make that the norm? And I found it very fascinating. And I was talking to some friends and my girlfriend and some of her friends about some of their experiences because just because I've had this experience doesn't mean it's the norm out there.
What do you think? I mean, do you think it's the norm?
I don't think my experience is the norm. No. Why do I think what is the norm?
Like the norm, your experience, like how you didn't feel like you had to perform, if you will, is kind of what I'm gathering from what you're saying.
No, I think I've been very lucky in other like for example, like being tall. Being tall. I think when I think about my privileges in my life, I think being tall and considered by average society standards as attractive has been super beneficial to me. And that has given me, I suppose, a level of confidence, or maybe confidence I didn't even deserve to have at times, or the love from my parents. So when I felt like an outsider in other aspects of life, I guess I was fortunate enough not to worry about that so much.
Yeah, you got a lot of privileges. I mean, you're a good-looking guy,
Sure.
You're tall. There's a lot of things that are working in your benefit for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important for those of us with those privileges to also go back and be like, oh man, wow. So like if I didn't have this, how would my confidence be affected? Or what would my life be like? Or how much have I relied on this type of thing? Because again, like what I try to do internally is to strip away a lot of those things and say like, okay, if I didn't have that, if I woke up tomorrow and I couldn't use my legs, would I still feel like I was enough? And so often the answer in my life has been no.
Sure.
Because for many men, that enoughness comes from external validation. It doesn't come from within. Like you were really blessed not only to have the privileges, but it seems like to have a family that actually reinstilled those values in you.
Oh,
and
yeah.
reminded you that no, you cry, it's okay. Like I tell my little boy, like the heart is his strongest muscle. Strongest muscle in his body is his heart. Because the world's going to tell him that's not
his
the
tongue.
case. It's well, science might. Yeah. But the world's going to tell you it's like everything else. It's all the visual things. But
Sure.
at the end of the day, I think the most important thing for us men is to start to rely on those other things.
Yeah. You talk a lot about being enough in your book. And, we've talked to a lot of young men on the show, and I go on the internet and I'll see things. And even when I'm like giving advice, or I see other people give advice, especially when it's dating advice, like, oh, do X, Y, or Z to get a date. And I see a lot of comments where it's just like, well, this only works for if you're good looking or rich. And I'll see a lot of that. And I feel like
there's a lot of men that are hurting right now.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of growing hurt with young men and a lot of disenfranchised men. And I want to continue to figure out ways to try to connect with men who might not feel like, and if they're not 6'2" or if they're not 6 foot, or they feel like they don't have the the looks that other people have, how can we give them the confidence? And I'm curious for you is, how do you kind of reconcile between self-love and being enough, which I think is great, and being your best self versus like, hey, I love myself, but how do I invest in myself to make certain improvements, or whatever that is, whatever your goals are? So how do you kind of reconcile between those two mindsets of just being enough,
like acceptance and accountability?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
It's an interesting question. I don't think I've ever been asked that. I think that I talk in the first book in Man Enough about the why ladder. Figuring out why we do things is important. Like there's this whole thing about self-love. I don't write about self-love. I write about enoughness. I think that most people struggle with self-love, and I think there's also this very trendy idea that like we have to like really love ourselves and put ourselves first, and I think that that's a little bit of a trap. I think we have to be mindful. When I talk about enoughness, it comes down to like understanding that who I am as I am is enough. I don't have to be 6'3". I don't have to be 6'2". I don't have to be any taller than I am. I don't have to be better looking than I am. I don't have to have bigger muscles than I am. I just have to know that who I am innately, intrinsically is enough. The way that I was created, the way God created me. I think spirituality plays a big part in that for me. That we were not accidents, that we are miracles, every single one of us.
Yeah.
That the statistical probabilities of us existing right now are very, very slim. It's a miracle that we're even here. And so we're here for a reason, that every one of us has a God-given talent and ability to affect the world around them and make a difference. So that enoughness starts almost from a soul spiritual level. What I'm also hearing in the question is like, okay, well, then how do you balance like self-improvement maybe? Or is it like,
whatever it is. I see a guy coming up to me who's just like, hey, I'm struggling with dating, whatever. And let's say I notice that like, maybe he doesn't have like, maybe he's kind of dressed a bit sloppy. He hasn't like, taken care of himself.
Sure.
Whatever it is. Maybe he is, feeling a little down, or he hasn't like, I ask him what he's been up to. He's like, oh, not much. Haven't really done anything. I'm asking questions about what he's investing in, or what are his passions and things like that. And he doesn't really have any answers. And
he feels kind of lost.
He's not really, and I'm like, what are you doing to invest in yourself? And he's like, well, nothing. How do you what would you say to that young man who says, Justin, that's great, but like, you're a great looking guy who's a successful actor, director, writer, and you're a tall guy, and you seem like you have some money, but that's not me, man.
Yeah. First thing I'd say to him is that I know what it's like to feel directionless and to feel like I'm not enough. I know what it's like to be really insecure. And it doesn't matter how many layers of privilege you put on. If you don't feel like you're enough, then you're never going to feel like you're enough. And so I'm grateful that I've been in so many places, even in success, where I know what it's like to feel like, oh man, I don't feel good looking. I don't feel like I have any purpose. Am I even doing the right thing? I know what that's like. I know what it's like to be depressed. I know what it's like to have anxiety. So the first thing I would do is to make sure that he knows that like, this isn't me talking down or at him. It's me talking with him and saying like, hey, I feel you, but you can't change your life. You can't start to build the future you want if you don't have an equilibrium, a balance of feeling like you have a purpose in the first place. And I think that that's where a lot of men today are really struggling, is they don't feel value. They don't see that there is a place for them in this world.
Yeah.
And I think that we can do all the talking we want, like theoretically about like, oh, what would you say to this person or this person? But it really comes down to each of us feeling like we have something to offer. And back to masculinity, so much of masculinity and what we're raised with as young boys is that our value is equal to our productivity. If we're not producing in one way or another, we don't have value as men. And a lot of men currently don't feel like they have value. So it's a more complicated, I think, nuanced question than that. I think the whole conversation is very nuanced. But I come down to like the reason I wrote the book, the reason I talk about these things, especially with like 11 to 18-year-olds, it's helping boys realize that first of all, they're not alone. And that starts with being vulnerable. That starts with vulnerability, right? Like, I want to ask you, you had this unique experience, but what were your biggest struggles? Like, what were the things that kept you up at night, that make you insecure as this beautiful, tall, privileged man with a show?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, when I think about that, fortunately, I didn't struggle with a lot of personal insecurities, right? I mean, like, I feel like I feel like my insecurities creeped up more in adulthood rather than childhood. But it's like, for example, like, I was bullied in middle school.
For what?
Because I liked the same girl as another guy,
Mhm.
and I was bullied hard. I mean, one day I showed up to school and half the guys in school called me gay. So, and
How'd that make you feel?
Oh, terrible. I mean, well, at the time it was in 7th grade. So that was a very confusing experience for me. And I've talked about this before in the show, but like, that was at a time of my life where I didn't really understand my sexuality. I don't even know if I had really gone through puberty at that point.
Yeah.
And I was bullied so much for it that I was just like, maybe I am.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember having that thought. It's just like,
Everyone's calling me gay.
I guess
Maybe
I
I'm
could
gay.
be, And then, obviously as I went through puberty and realized I was attracted to girls, but I look back kind of, grateful for that experience in a sense, because I think that experience made me very comfortable with my sexuality, because I survived that, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I don't have a thought of feeling insecure about it. Like, I remember had that bothering me.
Yeah.
But it didn't devalue how I felt about myself, I suppose.
That's a beautiful thing, that in 7th grade, you could be that bullied and not have your self-worth affected.
Yeah. I mean, again, I was sad and I didn't want to go to school, but it didn't affect my self-worth, which is kind of interesting. As I got into adulthood or going on TV or reality TV, that certainly played into insecurities and things like that. And
why'd you go on reality TV?
Why?
Yeah.
Adventure.
Yeah.
My friend signed me up. My friend's wife signed me up, and figured, well,
Your friend's wife signed you up.
Yeah, and
This was the Bachelor.
The Bachelor.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm your worst guest ever, because I have not seen an episode.
Not required for this particular episode.
Not required viewing.
But I had the thought, I had never been to Europe, which was an active thought. I was like, well, I've never been to Europe, and I know they travel a lot on this show, so that should be fun. And that's ultimately why I decided to go. Yeah.
Got it. So it wasn't to find love.
No, but I was open to the experience. I mean, I think I've said this before, but if anyone goes on a reality TV show for love, it's a little silly. But once I went there, I was open to what the reality of the show was.
And you were one of the guys competing for the woman?
I was at first, and then I was the guy.
And then you were the guy. So that's okay, got it.
That's the Bachelor.
That's the Bachelor.
Mm-hmm.
So you were the Bachelor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And did you find your love?
I fell in love.
What's that? Now?
I have a girlfriend now, and I'm very much in love. But at the time, I found love, and I did. I found. I found love multiple times on that show, and I've cried multiple. I mean, if I wasn't crying my mom's shoulders, the first season of The Bachelor, the showrunner at the time was a woman who I guess I'm still friends with to this day, and in some ways, like a mother figure. And this was off camera, and I'll never forget. Like, after I was the runner up. So I was down to the final 2. It was the day of the proposal, and it's a very confusing day.
Because you have to propose, right?
Yeah, sure. Without getting into it and explaining it, but
yeah, sure.
Yeah, and
typically, yeah.
I remember she came and broke up with me, and then that was very confusing. So I just was kind of like a deer in headlights. But after off camera, the producer came up to me, and she hugged me, and I just.
Good, beautiful.
Fell apart and started bawling. So yeah, I think I go back to thanking my parents, where I didn't really struggle with my self-worth until I started falling in love, until I started meeting, having feelings and having relationships that didn't work out, and that's when I had my own struggles. But before that, it wasn't until I started falling in love that I at times lost my confidence.
At times,
yeah.
I'm just curious, Do you guys feel that the men that you have dated struggle in some way with confidence, but maybe don't show it, don't allow that in? I'm just curious.
I'm running through them in my head.
Well, I realized a little while ago that a lot of the men I've dated were accused of being gay or queer when that's not how they identify with. And I think it maybe speaks to traits that are maybe considered effeminate and then in a middle school environment, therefore gay, are things that I really gravitate towards in partners.
Like what?
I think I really appreciate men who kind of, I don't know, I think it's like a tolerance for nuance and ambiguity that I think sometimes is not always allowed or not always like nurtured within men. This is obviously, not speaking from experience in any capacity. So if you guys have different experiences, please let me know. But I think I really appreciate like a very high level of kind of like thoughtfulness. And I think within thoughtfulness and nuance, it's kind of counter to having to be protective and having to be strong and having to have a take right away and having to be assertive in opinions. And I think I really respond to people who are who have the confidence to kind of detach from that.
Yeah.
I was saying before you, Justin, showed up, we were talking about dating a little bit, and you were talking about, the different types of guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like you were talking about if you're on a date with someone who you might see as they project an insecurity. And I was curious what you had to think about that, where, you just tell them.
Oh, no, I think we were talking about men being vulnerable. And then also like the example we were talking about of someone that we've both encountered where it was just like, he clearly had a lot of insecurities, but he was leading with that. And we were kind of trying to coach him about dating or whatever. And I was like, especially like, and I wasn't in any way trying to shut him down, but I was like, if the first thing you say when you're on a first date with someone is, I'm so stupid and like I look terrible and and I hate this about myself or whatever. I'm like,
that's not vulnerability.
It's not gonna like invite you in. And I'm like, I can be someone's cheerleader. Like, absolutely. The first like relationship I was in was awful because I was so put on the back burner because everything was about him. And it was like late night calls after he got out of a treatment center and whatever. Like, I can be your cheerleader. But if that's the first date and the first encounter I have for you is feeling like I have to do that for you, especially because of my experiences, like it puts a little flag up there because I'm like, I was destroyed because I was constantly just like trying to keep a different person alive. And I was like, I can't do that again.
And
that's a lot.
For you, do you see that a lot with the men you're dating? Do you see it's like either this kind of bravado, confident kind of, whether it's a projection or they're actually confident, or, men who seem insecure, but instead of, as Justin's saying, like maybe open to talking about vulnerabilities, are just dumping all their insecurities out and thinking, and do you think the guys that are doing that, do you think it's them thinking they're being vulnerable, or do you think it's just them
I think sometimes
venting their frustrations?
Yeah, it feels at least more venting, or like that's what they're thinking. So, and they don't really know a way of avoiding that. And that's just on top of mind and it spews out. But yeah, I've definitely gone on dates too, where it's like far too much. And it's like the quote unquote gym bro, like stereotype. And that's another way for me to run away. Cause I feel like growing up, like my dad and I have a great relationship. I'm like daddy's girl and he's so like quiet and there's a quiet confidence and he's not like this bravado dude. And I think I really like that. So if someone shows up and they're rude to the waiter or they're throwing their weight around or talking about money, I'm like, absolutely not.
Yeah. Totally.
But the reason why like the guy I dated over the summer and I was so into him is because that was a different like, here's the terrible thing that happened to me, but it really made me learn a lot about therapy and journaling. And I've done all these X, Y, and Z. And I was like, oh, here's someone who's working on himself. I don't have to do that for him. We can meet each other in the middle and make each other better. But it's not like either or. It's not one of us constantly prioritizing the other person, vice versa.
And like mutual emotional labor.
Like we're both working on ourselves, but we can now do that together.
Yeah. I have this show. We predominantly have an audience of women. We call them our 10 percenters, and the men I've met who listen to this show, the sweetest, most wonderful men. But I constantly try to think of ways. I'm always thinking, how can I connect with more men who have an interest talking about feelings and empathy and dating and relationships and boundaries and expectations. And to be honest, it's something I do struggle with in terms of, trying to attract more men to to give a shit about this type of content. And I'm curious if you've had any thoughts on that.
That's amazing. I mean, if you have 10% of your listeners who are men, like I don't, when I meet one man on the street who comes up to me and he says something really sweet to me, or one listener or anything, I realize like, wow, how many people does that man interact with on a daily basis? So it's like this idea of like wanting more followers or wanting more men to follow us. Like at the same time, that those 10% who are listening to you and who are gaining something that they can take with them into all of their relationships, whether it be with men or with women or whoever they're with, like that's the butterfly effect of that you can't quantify. And I think that's how you change the world. So for me, I'm generally focused on like one man at a time. Like if I have a man in my personal life who is willing to call me and open up and who we can dig in and work on stuff with, like that is so fulfilling to me, because for so long I didn't have that. There was no safe spaces for men to do that. Mm-hmm. At least when I was growing up, there wasn't. And I'm talking about like real vulnerability. I'm not talking about like, oh, I'm stupid or I'm this, and that's not vulnerability. That's insecurity and masochism in a way. Like this is us, like he's telling you how he feels about himself, and probably in some ways trying to like have this not go well. But we have to like, it's also whiny. Like there's a difference between vulnerability and whining. Like vulnerability is when you share something in a safe place and you have something to lose by sharing it. Like it was one of the reasons why I struggled with my dad, and I had him on my show and we actually had this beautiful moment and we've been doing a lot of work together. But growing up, he was emotional, but he wasn't vulnerable. He never taught me like growing up, like, oh, like this is something that I'm struggling with. I never saw the things that my dad was struggling with or that he wasn't good at or that he was insecure about it, because he, like my grandfather and like so many of us, man, we put on this front where everything's okay and we have to be the providers. And if there's weakness, then everything's going to fall apart. And now, as he's getting older, he's showing a lot more of that. And then right before I got married, or right after I got married, he told me the best piece of advice I'd ever gotten on love, which is that I have to choose it. And there were times he told me that he thought about leaving my mom, and they've been married. They're married 40 years this year, and that they didn't know if they were going to work out, but every day they chose each other. He chose her.
Love that.
When he did. And I was like, well, where was this when I was 15, Dad? I'm like, I'm getting it now at 30, but where was this when I was 15? And I can't. And it wasn't his fault. He didn't have the words. He didn't know how to share it. But that's the difference between vulnerability and whining and just complaining, And I think we need to teach men how to actually be vulnerable, which is you tell me something that is not easy to share. Because we're vulnerable with one or two or three, most men, like nobody, but like maybe one person. The majority of men who are in relationships with women are only vulnerable with those women.
You have kids, yeah?
I have 2 kids.
2 kids?
Yeah.
Boy, girl.
5-year-old boy, 7-year-old girl.
And your 5-year-old boy, so, well, he's 5, but he's getting to that point where you're going to maybe start having these conversations with him.
Well, we've already started. Yeah.
Okay.
At 3.5, he came home and said that he had a friend of his that never cried and made fun of him for crying.
And what did you say? Yeah, my question, like, how are you planning on teaching your son about masculinity?
One of the things we're doing is, look, it's a great experiment, right? So I know the world is going to tell my daughter that she has to be a certain way, that she's got to not take up space and be polite and pretty and put together and all of the various things that society tends to just, in general, say that women should be, that the feminine should be. And we're going to do the same thing to him as boys. He shouldn't cry. He should be strong and he should be tough and he should be, he should be focused and all of the various things. So what we're doing every day and every night is kind of like ingraining in them the opposite. So like with my daughter, I want her to take up space. I want her to be loud. I want her to know that she can take physical risk, as an example. Just as much as the boys can. I want her to have that full experience, because when she goes to school, she's going to be channeled. Her energy is going to be channeled into a certain direction. And at home, I want her to know that this is a safe place and this is who we see you as, and this is amazing, and you are enough just as you are. And my son, it's a little bit of the opposite. He naturally is that. And I want him to know that Like I said, the heart
He naturally is what?
He naturally acts like the way you would generally see a young 5-year-old boy act, which is he's a tornado. He's a testosterone tornado.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of young boys who are not that way, but my son is and I was the same way. So we're really focusing on the emotional parts, reminding him about emotional bravery and compassion and empathy and sensitivity, and that these are strengths that are just as, if not more important than the physical strengths. Because when these young boys say, well, I don't cry, and they make him feel bad for it, and they start to, he has long hair like me, and someone said he looked like a girl once. And I was like, well, that's a compliment. Girls are awesome. How awesome is your sister? Like, girls can do so many cool things. Like, girls get to have babies. Men could never do that. We're not like, and you have to remind them like, oh, being a girl is actually an amazing thing. That's how you teach equality at a young age versus like this competition between the sexes. Like if you're a boy and you're called a girl, like that's the worst thing in the world. That's what I felt.
Mm-hmm.
But what if that doesn't have to be that way? What if you have a respect and reverence for girls at a young age? I don't know what's going to happen. So we're really focusing on empathy and compassion and sensitivity and letting him know that those things are important. And then when he watches me work out, right? So I'm training for something right now. I'm working out, but I explain to him that I'm able to do that because I work on my heart first, right? It's one thing to have muscles. It's another thing to have emotional strength.
Sure.
And so I work on my heart and I get my heart strong, and then I go work on my body and I get my body strong, because one without the other, like, it's great. Yeah, you can have all the muscles in the world and you can move stuff, but if you don't know who you are and you're not in touch with yourself, then what's the point? It's it's another shell. It's another layer that we have to try to get through.
Before we get to our call and texting office hours, because I know they're ready, I'm curious, talking about like emotions and vulnerability, what makes you cry the most? Or is it a certain kind of movie? Is it certain conversations? What gets you really emotional? What makes you open up? What gets the tears going?
It surprises me on a day-to-day basis, especially, I do so much work, and we've done so much work with therapy, and I do a lot of somatic therapy. And
What's somatic therapy?
Somatic therapy is getting into your body so that you actually can feel. I believe that your body holds all of your feelings and emotions, especially in us men, when we haven't been able to express them over the course of our lives. I mean, they found, of course, we know that there are stress hormones that are released when we cry as children. So the more that we are teaching ourselves to not cry, the more that stress lives in our body. So like the body keeps the score, what happened to you, this Gabor Mate's new book. There's just incredible work being done out there in this field. So, and I think that everybody should really get into that. But over the course of the last couple of years, it surprises me. I think a lot of the things that make me cry right now have to do with my children. For some reason, I make movies that make people cry because I love to cry. So romance makes me cry. When people underdog stories make me cry. When people overcome tremendous adversity,
Mm-hmm.
I cry. I spent 10 years making documentaries about individuals who are living with terminal illnesses and choosing life and love in the face of their adversity. So those situations have for sure made me cry, and I have a few friends who are still struggling with that. And also happy moments, like being proud of my children and like watching them do something that was surprising to me can get me to tear up.
Happy moments make me cry way more than sad moments.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Like a commercial that makes you happy, or like a happy moment in a movie or a TV show. Like, yeah.
There's still always
those get me all like sad moments on TV, not as much, but I'm a sucker for a happy moment on TV shows.
Happy moments. And then also like, you'll find if you ever have kids, like, you'll take your kid to kindergarten for the first day and you're like, wait, my kid's in kindergarten? And you just start sobbing like when they walk away. I cry thinking about the fact that when my daughter's going to go to college one day and I'm going to have to she's going to be leaving my house and, all kinds of stuff. I cry all the time.
What's an insecurity you've worked through? I know you talked about in your book about, as an actor and taking your shirt off and being the shirtless guy. But other than that, what's an insecurity that you've had to work through, or maybe you're still working on it, but was something you've had to work to try to overcome, and maybe you've made some progress, but something that, it bothered you about yourself. Like for me, in adulthood, I'm dyslexic, and I also have like a strong personality where I often don't feel like I can be aloof and I can be in my thoughts, and sometimes I come across a certain way. That's something I've had to struggle with and work on.
So you're insecure about coming off a certain way.
Yeah. And and that's for me, like I've had to, back to like loving myself and accepting myself. And there's a challenge, something I try to work on and being mindful of. I don't even have an answer, because it's like, it's learning that I'm dyslexic, and I didn't learn that until like adulthood, or struggling to read publicly. Or being being perceived as aloof, or like I might come across as an ass or a jerk because I'm just kind of like just sitting there at a party. I'm a bit introverted as well. So you combine all that. I go to a party and I'm just sitting there minding my own business, thinking about whatever, not like paying attention to someone who's trying to talk to me. And I'm like, fuck, I did it again. And there's this thought I struggle with where, to myself, it's like, well, do I want... where do I draw the line between, well, this is who I am. I've accepted, I've found answers to explain my why I do what I do, because when I was younger, I was like, I don't know why I fucking do this. Versus, well, I don't want to come across this way, and I don't want to make people feel inferior, or that I'm not seeing them, or I'm not recognizing them. So I do have to work on that, and working on that and on my weaknesses, because I also don't want people to perceive me a certain way that I don't feel that I am. Is there something like that you work on?
First of all, I want to say thank you for sharing that.
No problem. Yeah. How's it going?
Hey there. My name is Carly. I'm 25 years old.
How can we help, Carly?
And I need some help because I have a friendship. I know that it needs to end, but I can't decide if I should just peacefully go or if I really need to vent it all out and lay it on her, honestly.
Well, first of all, my first question is like, how long has this friendship lasted? Like, how old is this friendship?
The friendship, I met her in 2018, so it's about 4 years old, but we stopped working together about 2 years ago, and it's definitely faded since then. So we already don't see each other very often, maybe like once or twice a year.
Okay. Feel free to ask any questions.
Oh, I'm just gathering. I'm just collecting data right now.
So I guess the next big question is why do you want to end this friendship? Because essentially you're kind of asking, can you ghost this friendship, right?
Kind of, because I mean, I could easily just be fake and keep being nice. And if we run into each other at group things, play it cool. And she never has to know that she's like kind of dead to me. Or I could tell her why I say kind of dead to me. Let me just tell you the story. Okay. I'll have to give a little background because it involves an ex. So the ex that is in question, I met him at a job when I was in college. So that was like 5 or 6 years ago at that time. And we were just friends for a really long time. And then in 2020, he got laid off from his job because of COVID. So I got him a job where I worked, which was like kind of like a country club type place. I got him like a serving job there. So we were friends when he got the job, but it was pretty quick into it that it was like, okay, there's tension here. We're clearly going to date. Like there's something going on between us. So I was in a management position. So I ended up leaving that job, not just for him. I also got into like a career from my degree, but a big part of it was that I didn't want to compromise everything at work. So I left. So I left him working there with this friend, and they became somewhat friends as well. And then she actually started dating his best friend. So we were good friends and they were best friends and we were dating each other. And then she actually ended up being roommates with them as like a third person in their house for a while. So she got pretty close to my boyfriend as well as me.
So your boyfriend and her boyfriend were roommates, and she moved in with them?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So basically, well, the weird part is me and my boyfriend broke up early June, and it was for a lot of reasons, mostly maturity level, but a lot of it was that I knew I wanted to move out of our hometown, and he had told me he did too. And then he came back and was like, I actually want to be here like until my parents die. And I was like, well, that's like a really long time away. So I'm actually good on that. Like, but there was a lot of reasons that we broke up. But I would say like in the months leading up to our breakup, he was clearly checked out. He didn't do anything for my birthday. He didn't do anything for Valentine's Day. When we moved in together, we were living together. He started playing video games like 6 hours a night. And before that, he had never played a video game in the entire 2 years we were dating, you know? So it was just like a big shock when we lived together. So we broke up. Turned out that her and her boyfriend, who is his best friend, broke up on the exact same day, which was odd.
Okay.
So, and we hadn't communicated to each other at all.
Did he initiate the breakup or did you initiate the breakup?
I initiated the breakup, but to my surprise at the time, he was like, I agree, let's break up. Like he was 100% on board when I brought it up immediately.
And you were like,
and I was like, okay, I really was not expecting that, honestly, because like it was going to be a pain for us. Like we bought all of the stuff together. He was the one that was so excited to move in and the one that pushed me really hard to move in with him. So when we broke up only 3 months into our lease, like I expected a fight, honestly, and he didn't give me one at all. Like he was just like, you're right. And and I should mention like one of the things that was like a breaking point for me in the last week, I asked him to listen to a podcast on like attachment styles because I felt like that was kind of our disconnect.
Sure.
And he refused to do it. He was like, I don't have time to listen to it. I was like, it's 30 minutes, like, please. And he wouldn't do it. I asked him to take his attachment style quiz. He did that for me. And he was avoidant and I was anxious. And so I was like, I know there's a lot of issues that come with this. Like, please work on this with me. And he just wasn't interested at all. So we ended it. So since we're living together and we both loved our apartment, I was like, you know, you're 10 minutes from work. You have now a person who could move in with you. Your best friend just got dumped as well. So I'll move out. I'll find another place. So I did. I found another place. I moved out. It took me maybe like 3 weeks to move out, right? So after 2 days after I moved out, and by the way, in the month after we broke up, since we felt like we still had a lot of love for each other, we were still kind of like playing boyfriend, girlfriend, like still hooking up a little bit. And so it was really confusing because I did still love him. I just knew it wasn't right. So it hurt. It hurt a lot. And now I'm in a new place by myself, like an hour from all my friends. And so 2 days into living there, they all came to visit me. They all hung out. And then when they left, I was checking their locations to make sure they got home okay. And I still had my ex-boyfriend on there. And I see he's at an address that he and I had never been to together. And it's like 2 a.m. at this time. And I'm like, that is so weird. Like, why is he at that address? So I'm already like, my interest is piqued. And the address sounds really familiar, but I don't know why. So I think back and I remember the day that me and my ex broke up, I went over to this friend's house and we hung out because we were both freshly broken up. We were sad. We were crying. And one of her friends from work visited her and brought her like some candy to be like, sorry for the breakup. And she was so weird with me. Like she wouldn't make eye contact with me. She like had big eyes. Like she looked scared of me. And I was like, what's this girl's deal? Like, why is she being so weird? Come to find out, it's her address, right? So he started sleeping with this girl who I had met 2 days after I moved out. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. We were together for 2 years. I'm alone in my house, an hour from my friends, and I'm freaking out. And I'm like, you know, and so I make sure it's her address. I confirm it and I wait. He sleeps there every night for like 4 or 5 days in a row. And I'm like,
you were monitoring?
This is in. I was like, once I realized, I was like, I was in. Like location reminders, like I'm checking it, you know?
Sure.
So I see he sleeps there like 4 or 5 nights and I'm like, oh, no. And I'm getting texts from like mutual friends being like, he's taking this so hard. Like, you have no idea how much you meant to him. And I'm like, actually, that's not true. So this is where I get a little crazy toxic and it gets worse. I send a group text out to everyone. We had a group message with like all of our friends from work in it. And from when I worked there it was maybe like 20 people. And I sent a text to everybody that said, hey, just so you guys know, I moved out less than a week ago and already fucking some other girl from I shouldn't have said that, from his work. So
We'll
when
bleep
I
that
do
out.
that,
Yeah.
and I also, since I had his location, I waited until he was at work to send it so that he would have to deal with the fallout immediately, right?
Okay.
I didn't say any names in my text, right? So because I didn't
So you
say
made
any
it like a
names in my
murder
text,
mystery game for everyone.
right?
You created more
But
drama at work.
but it turned out that was, well, I didn't want to call her out because I didn't know her. Turns out, because I didn't call out a name, a second girl who he was also already sleeping with and had been texting during our relationship was like, oh my God, how did she find out? And starts like crying at work and going up to me like, how did she find out? A second girl who I didn't even know about. So now there's two girls that he's sleeping with within a week of me moving out. And I find out like he was already talking to them before we broke up. And then I find out this friend who the reason I'm calling is for knew about it all along. And I even explicitly asked her, like, is he seeing someone else already? That's insane. And she was like, no, definitely not. He would not do that to you. Like, no way. But she knew fully the whole situation. And then since then, she's just been a horrible friend about it. Like, she's hung out with him multiple times and then she'll call me to tell me about how different he is. And it's just like, you know how heartbroken I am. Like, why are you still telling me about this? And also, why are you still being friends with him? Why are you still defending him? This was all his decision, you know?
So is she, when you keep referring to her as a friend, like
Yeah.
it's a relationship, and so you haven't confronted her about this at all?
I did confront her about lying directly. I said, like, I can't understand how you could lie to me. And she just like, she was like, you need to put yourself in my shoes. I'm having to take care of 3 friendships here. I can't just think about you. I have to think about them too. And I'm like, yeah, but we go way back, first of all. And I'm the one being screwed over in this situation. So, I mean, she didn't really take any ownership. She was just like, you know, see it from my side.
Did you confront her about the fact that she was sleeping with him?
No, okay, so my friend isn't the one sleeping with
different
him.
girl.
Oh, it's a different.
Yeah.
She knew about the other
There's a
2
lot of friends
girls
here.
Oh,
because
okay.
she
She just
and
knew about
and,
okay.
and chose not to tell me when I asked her.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so
And then
your biggest frustration with this friend is that you feel like she should have been more loyal to you than the other people she claims that she was balancing. You know, those
exactly.
friendships.
And she's lied to me before that situation a few times, so it was kind of like a last straw thing of like, you're clearly not going to prioritize me. She's also canceled like our last 4 plans that we've had last minute when I texted her to be like, hey, I'm not coming. So it just feels like in a lot of ways, she's just not the real friend.
Sure.
And I'm fine with having outer layer friends, but I thought she was an inner layer friend.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I know that I don't want to trust her anymore.
Sure. So what do I think you should do? I'm curious what Justin thinks, but I just believe in like good, healthy communication and good habits. And well, I know it made for a good story. I don't think you handling it the way you did by sending out that kind of cryptic texts and outing people and creating more drama. And I'm sure he caused a lot of pain and sadness with those people involved. I would encourage you, like, you know, ghosting in general, I don't think is very healthy. And like, whether you agree with this friend or not about what she did and how she handled it, you know, like if she considers you a friend and you just disappear on her, that's going to leave her with questions and feel like, well, what did I do? And you guys aren't on the same page. So I just feel like, yeah, while it might be a tough conversation, at least really expressing yourself of why you're pulling away and why you're setting a boundary with her I think you would feel better in the long run about that. And it would still give her an opportunity to maybe like reassess. You know, she might pull back and disagree with you at first, but over time, you know, she could come back in a couple months and say, hey, you know, I've really reflected and thought about this situation. I really don't like how I handle it. And can I have your forgiveness? I don't really know, but that's much more productive and it really opens the door for an opportunity for something good to happen rather than you just disappearing on her and ghosting her and leaving her with questions, because she clearly doesn't see the situation as you do, you know, and I get where you're coming from, but she does, you know, her point of view is her point of view, and it might not, she might see things differently, and she might have reasons why, like when I feel wronged, yes, loyalty matters to me. And we have very different perceptions of loyalty as people, And certainly when I feel wronged, I want my friends to have my back. But when other friends are involved, I have been very much disappointed and frustrated at how my friends prioritize my feelings versus others. But does that mean I was right over them? I'm not so sure. It just meant, that was my expectation that they didn't meet. And I just feel like just communicating your expectations, how they can meet in the future, will better serve you in the long run. Whether you stay friends with her or not, I think you'll just feel good about handling it in a more, open communication way, so to speak. I don't know.
Yeah,
Any
I
other
can
thoughts,
see that.
Justin?
I feel like I just watched this on Netflix. This was a fantastic story. Thank you. I think Nick's advice is great. I would encourage you to look at yourself and how you've handled it and what your feelings are around it, and before you go and burn any other houses down. Sometimes when we're not sober, emotionally, we can make decisions that don't just hurt other people, but hurt us in the long run. And it doesn't quite sound like it's an emotionally sober environment for anybody. And I would just also argue that you broke up with him. So you can choose to suffer.
True.
But it seems like you wanted this to end, and now it's time for you to, when you break up with someone, you have to let them go. You release them.
Yeah.
So you don't monitor their locations.
Justin makes a really great point about that too. And I understand, like, we do that, right? When we break up with someone, we want it to mean something, and we weirdly will monitor their behavior, post breakup, as a way to validate what we had when the relationship existed, which I understand the logic, but it doesn't also really make that much sense. And to Justin's point, your biggest frustration about this friends is what your ex-boyfriend did after you were dating. I know you mentioned, he said, oh, well, he might have been talking to these other girls, but, just consider the fact that you are thinking about firing a friend over something your ex-boyfriend did, not what your boyfriend did. And then deciding for her what loyalty you thought she owed you for what he was doing. And if she's also friends with him, that can get very complicated as a third party friend to try to prioritize loyalty. And, so, maybe to Justin's point, maybe try to empathize with your friend's point of view. Even if she's not empathizing with you, it might change your perspective a little bit.
Be the friend you want someone to be to you, to yourself first. And just go enjoy your life. Don't worry about the past, right? You broke up with him. You want something new.
Yeah.
The more you think about what happened before, the less likely you're going to be open to something new that you're actually excited about and hoping for. So,
do you still have access to his location?
No, and that was all within the week following the breakup. I haven't checked or done anything like that.
She's actually outside of his apartment right now.
Yeah, I'm parked right outside. No, and it's more that I feel like as a friend, I don't want to put any more emotional energy into it. Like you're saying, I do feel like I'm over it. I feel like I'm past it. And I feel like pulling up all these wounds is going to hurt that process.
Yeah, but you're not, I think you're kind of, I get your logic, but if you were really over it, then I don't think you would be considering firing this friend over it. You're just like, I think you just haven't fully processed it, and you're afraid to go back there because I'm sure you've made some progress, and you're afraid of kind of relapsing back to that kind of very vulnerable state of being kind of reactive and stalking him and things that you even can recognize were a bit toxic and you don't want to do. But maybe to Justin's point, just maybe give it a little bit more time. You can take a break from your friend. You can just pull back a little bit and, have a little more individual time and reflect and maybe hang out with other friends. And maybe there's a better time in the future down the road to say, hey, that did bother me. You also, in a couple of months, might feel very differently, where you realize, I don't even need to have that conversation because I've done the kind of emotional processing about that relationship, and I am kind of generally indifferent about it, and I don't really care. And I guess, yeah, you know what? I really was mad about that, and we weren't even dating, and so what was she supposed to say to me at the time? Maybe she just wanted to remove herself from drama. And then maybe you won't want to fire her as a friend anymore.
I've never had a conversation that went well when I was emotionally heated, ever.
Yeah.
Whether in relationships or business, it doesn't exist. So no matter what you do, take a few weeks off or a month off and cool down so you can see and sober up. And you'll find the answer in yourself.
Something my therapist says a lot is people don't make you feel anything. They invite you to feel anything. And I say that to in no way invalidate, I completely really can see where you're coming from in terms of feeling really upset by the situation and really underserved by your friend and how disappointing and makes, I would probably be super reactive too. So I say that in not get it under control, but in in any way that it can be empowering to you of kind of trying to integrate that into your thought patterns, because it's something I've been trying to do a lot, and it's helped me, especially when I do feel kind of at the mercy of other people's bad behavior, reminding myself the ways that I can kind of take back control.
Yeah. And also, I remember when I was cheated on way back when, I had a lot of expectations of what I thought my friend should do in that situation.
I've been there.
And they were fairly extreme looking back. At the time, I felt very justified for how I thought they should handle and how I thought they should treat her and things like that. And as time passed, I just really stopped caring. And I really was thankful to get to a place where I was indifferent. And, in the future, I think once you will know you're really over it when you really don't care how other people interact with him. Because you'll have your boundaries set up for what you need is in terms of your relationship with him, whatever that is. But if you do feel in the future you still feel like, hey, can I just talk to you about this? And maybe you just bring it up. I felt this way in the past, and I'm hoping that I don't have to feel this way in the future. But I wouldn't be surprised if you let things pass, and as Justin says, as things calm, that if you go back and reevaluate how you feel, it might be very different.
I can see that. And there's definitely a pride issue.
Write her a letter, get it all out, and then burn it.
Yeah. I like that.
There's an energy to it. And you never have to give her the weight of all of it. Because also some people can't hold it. And you're also in pain. I think at the end of the day, you're hurting. And you're really just feeling like nobody's there for you right now. And the people that do the breaking up also hurt too, right? Heart never breaks even. But so just make sure you're doing something for you.
Yeah, and you got blindsided a little bit because you were surprised by his reaction and you felt duped. And the more information you found, it was just like, oh, motherfucker, and it got
definitely,
right. And you wanted other people to feel like that. Again, back when I was cheated on, I wanted all my friends to feel all the same anger that I felt. And if they didn't, I felt like they were not being good friends to me.
Yeah, I can definitely feel that.
Yeah. If that's similar to what you're going through, I promise you, as time passes, the anger will go away.
It has. It's definitely faded.
Yeah, just give it more time.
You got this.
Yeah.
You're enough.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I really do.
All right. Well, thank you for the call. Keep us posted what you decide to do. I'd love in a couple months for you to give us an update on how you're feeling about the situation, if your perspective has changed at all.
Okay.
Or the script, so we can turn it into a movie.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. I didn't even get into all the drama. It was worse.
It was
worse than that. Yeah, I can give you the full story one day. But
all right. We can't wait. All right.
Nick will give you a cell phone after this. You can
Appreciate it.
Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. We were talking about insecurities, working on them. And I talked about the things I'm working on. I'm just curious on your end, what is something that you've been insecure about or struggle with? Or, for me, this is something like I shared, I'll never master this. This will be something I'll always master. It's a daily
work in progress.
It's a daily struggle for me. And oftentimes I'll have that kind of response of like, oh, fuck, did it again. Or I'll be worried about was I present? Did I do it? I'll ask Natalie, my girlfriend, often, and she's very helpful with that. But what's something that you're working on?
Yeah, and I just go back to acknowledging that that's not an easy thing to say. And also, we started the conversation by you saying you had read the book and there were some things that you weren't quite sure. But I would argue that based on what you're sharing, you very much had that experience, or you have it even in adulthood. just the wondering of how you're coming off and how you're making somebody else feel is an important thing.
Sure.
So I just want to just say that that's awesome, and I'm happy that you're working on that. I have so many things. Also, I was thinking, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have given the exact same answer you gave about childhood. I've been like, I was good. I was good. I couldn't even admit to my friends that I was struggling with something like you just shared until probably 10 years ago.
But for me, I asked that question because I wasn't struggling with that as a kid. I wasn't aware.
I wasn't, but that's the thing. I wasn't aware.
I was having this effect.
I wasn't aware of any of this stuff as a kid.
Yeah.
None of it.
Yeah.
I didn't even know I had anxiety until 5 years ago, until I actually got in touch with my body and I realized, oh, wait, those times when I have to like take a full breath, that's my body telling me that I have anxiety. Like, oh, wow, why am I having a hard time breathing? And then I just push through it because that's what men are taught to do our whole lives. No, I had anxiety for probably 20 years and I had no freaking clue. So I had no clue that I was dealing with any of the insecurities or any of the things that I was dealing with when I was in it. It wasn't until in hindsight I looked back and saw the path of destruction I caused, not just for myself, but for others, and how unhappy I was, that I realized, oh, there's some things that I have to work on. And then the deeper that I got, down to answer your question, the more in tune with all of the things on a daily basis that I'm working on. So I'll give you one as an example. You mentioned lightly the shirtless stuff. You know, I've had a really tough relationship with my body for as long as I can remember. I've always wanted my body to do more than it could in any given moment. This idea that like, oh, if I just worked harder, or if I just, did this or did this, I want to look like that guy. I've always had a very antagonistic relationship with my body, and it never came from this place of like being content. So I'd look in the mirror, I'd see what was wrong. I'd see what wasn't, which muscles weren't big enough. I'd want my abs to show more. I didn't like how I looked in certain clothes or certain shirts. Part of that was starting puberty late, and not getting muscles or getting made fun of for not having abs or whatever it was. And then that carries through, and we don't realize it as mid-30s, 40-year-old men. Like, we have the same insecurities we had. We just didn't know we had them. So for me, one of the things that I am doing now is I wake up in the morning, and before I pull out my phone, before I check my email, before I do any of that, I have a journal next to my bed. Sometimes I'll go into another room. I do like this red light. That's called it's called the Juve. It's just this red light thing, and I'll go and I meditate. I might do like this little morning movement, breath work stuff, and I write down positive affirmations, and I'll write down things that I like about my body. And at first, it was so hard for me to pick something that I liked, or to even, as a man, write down like, I have a great ass, or whatever it is.
That was a challenge?
It was, yeah, it's absolutely a challenge. I think that for me, for me at least, it was hard for me to write down without anybody around the things that I liked about my body. And so in doing that, I started to look in the mirror and then find something about myself and smile at it, instead of find something that was wrong, or, I'm aging, or this or whatever. And all the things that we do when we compare ourselves to the highlight reels of other people's lives every single day. And that's really, really changed the energy that I have around my body. And I've been doing it for a while now. And I can tell in the days that I miss it, because I'll let some of those thoughts will come back in, and I'll compare myself to somebody else, or to the way that I used to look, or I'll just in general have a negative outlook of how I look or feel when I look in the mirror. But for the most part, it's like really focusing on looking at myself now, being grateful, smiling. Like, that was not something I ever did. I never smiled at myself in the mirror. And so now in the morning when I'm brushing my teeth, and I'll just find something positive about myself and move on. That's just one example. I have a whole list of things that I'm constantly thinking about and working on. And just like yourself, want to make sure that I'm not making people feel a certain way when I'm with them, or things like that. But yeah, this is life. This is the human condition. We're all, at the end of the day, works in progresses. We will never arrive. That's not the purpose of this life. But I think as long as we're doing the work individually, then hopefully we're making ourselves fertile ground to bringing this back to what this show seems to be about, is to have a meaningful relationship and invite somebody else in that is also doing that same work.
Nice. Well, it's a great place to end it. Can't thank you enough, Justin, for taking the time to come in and speak with us. Can you let my audience know, obviously you have your book coming out, you have Man Enough, and all the things that you're doing. feel free to share with my audience, let them know where they can find more of it.
You can, I guess social media, right? Justin Baldoni is my name, and that's where my stuff is,
All right.
I guess.
Great.
I have a podcast, manenough.com/podcast.
All right. Well, and then when is Boys Will Be Human come out?
It came out a few months ago.
Came out a couple
Yeah,
months
we
ago.
did
Oh,
3
great.
weeks on the New York Times bestseller list.
right.
So yeah, it's been out, and it's really sweet.
Great. Well, check it out, and congratulations on
Thank you.
everything,
I
and
appreciate it.
thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening, guys. Don't forget to send in those questions at asknick@theviallfiles.com. Don't forget, next week we have Liz Schwartz. Did I say it right?
Lisa Schwartz.
Lisa. We have Lisa Schwartz.
Oh,
Schwartz.
we're going to do it again.
Lisa Schwartz. I have my
Schwartz.
Schwartz. I'm so bad with my SCHs. There's another insecurity. My mumble.
Schwartz.
All right. Bye. Hey guys, thanks for watching, but before you go, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss any future videos like our Mondays Ask Nick for your favorite relationship stories and advice, and our Tuesday Bachelor recaps. See you next time.